minutes. Attendees, and some of our attendees may be commissioners, but because you are a commissioner, we'll allow 5 minutes if you have something you want to share. Other than that, it's 3 minutes, and that's pretty much how we run most of our public meetings. 3 minutes for the public, 5 minutes for commissioners and task force members. But tonight, you probably won't hear a lot from the commissioners or task force members. Task force members, because we're here to listen to the public, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to listen, and then towards the end of the program, there may be time to circle back with some commissioners who happen to be task force members also, or just task force members in general. So we want to be concise and make the best use of our time that we can. We're here primarily to hear from 7B or hear about 7B and 7F, although we know that there are times when some other comments or suggestions might be necessary about some other commissions. So I'm going to turn it back to my co-chair, Commissioner Joelle Castone. By the way, I didn't say, but I am a commissioner myself from 7D01, and my co-chair is 7F07. Mr. Co-chair, it's all in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairwoman. Before I call forth the task force member to be speaking today, can you please, for the listening public, we got this last time. Can you just speak about, as you're talking about it, the general area within your commission? I'm gonna call forth ANC 7B. That would be Dr. Marla Dean as well as Irk Rogers. But can you also, for the listening audience, begin to share exactly the 7B area for them, please? I will start with you, Dr. Dean.
Thank you, Chairperson Castile. I'm going to defer to Mr. Rogers. We met, we talked, and he's going to give the presentation, and I'll add on to it.
You mute, Mr. Rogers.
No go. I guess that would help, wouldn't it? There we go. Did everybody hear me? I guess you couldn't hear all the stuff I was saying prior to that. So that's a good thing. Now, good evening, everyone. And thank you for participating. And I'll keep it brief since I don't have the ability to share screen. In general, ANC 7B is on the southern part of the ward, bounded by Ward 8, the state of Maryland. And for
I'm sorry. Mr. Rogers, do you need to share screen? I can give you permission so you can do that.
If you don't mind, that would.
Not a problem.
That would help. 7B. Oh, okay. So
while you're waiting to set up your screen, Eric, I'll just say that the three of us, the three representatives from 7B, we met to discuss this. So this is very much involving Travis Swanson, who is the third member of our team. So just want to let you know, he's traveling today. He's on a plane as we speak, and he was hoping that the plane had internet service so he could join us, but it may not.
And then if folks can bear with me. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Now we can.
You can? Okay. So this is one of the drafts that we did just to kind of give a general sense of the thought process that we have. We actually have a more recent draft, which I will later on try to pull up. But in general, ANC 7B is bounded by Massachusetts Avenue to the north, Ward 8 to the west, to the west, the state of Maryland to the south, and to the east. And one of the things that we tried to do, and what we've taken into consideration from the last meeting, was trying to find a way to use natural boundaries, neighborhood boundaries, and the like, So this is one iteration of our thinking. We have a better product, like I said, that I'll share when I pull it up later as we move forward and listening to folks' comments. But that's the thinking that we did in trying to develop our maps. Our map is within the newer one that I'll show later, has everything within the 1900 to 2100 range. It's respectful of neighborhood boundaries, and it's also respectful of the intent of single member districts being compact, contiguous, and along major neighborhood dividing lines. So to the extent that we could, that's what we did. Other than that, Dr. Dean, I think that's it. I think we just want to hear from the citizens. Let me stop sharing screen, and when ready, we can pull up the other one.
If you can pull up, while I'm just talking, if you can pull up the other one. So some of the things we heard previously is to make communities whole if we can. However, some communities, neighborhood associations are just too large to be in one. So I just want to let you know that we made every effort to do so. I don't know if I can share screen. Can I share screen? Sheila?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you. So to give you an exemplar of that, if you look at, this is DuPont Park Civic Association. If you look at the maps of where they're located, it's very difficult to put all of it in one single member district. So just want to give you an example of how we try to, but it's not always the case. I did get actually a suggestion in opposition of neighborhoods being neatly put in single member districts. I did get a phone call and someone said it kind of makes it a hyper localized community if we put single member districts, neighborhood associations and single member districts, and they thought it was antithetical to the entire ward working together. So I do want to put that sentiment on the table since I did get that call. Not sure if we'll end up hearing more of that kind of conversation tonight, but that was one person's position, that they actually did not like the idea of neighborhoods not being in single member districts. They thought that undermined the effort of us being one ward. So that's one comment that I've heard. And then, but we, in our deliberations, did use what we heard from the listening session 1, and we made every effort to do so, to bring neighborhoods together in a way that made sense, if we could. Eric, do you have the second map up yet?
I don't. Why don't we go ahead and listen to the folks, and then because I want to be respectful of folks' time.
Okay, cool, no problem. Thank you.
So commissioners, so co-chairs Blair and Castone, how would you like? Do you want me to let you ask folks to raise their hands or put questions in the chat if they have comments about 7B? How do you want to handle that? You're muted, Co-Chair Blair.
I'm going to defer to my co-chair for this evening on how he would like to proceed with taking questions.
Thank you, co-chair. Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
Okay, so for those that are in the audience, if you have a question, please use the virtual raise your hand function in Zoom, or you can put your question in the chat. And Dr. Dean and Mr. Rogers, I see that there is a question in the chat. It says, how many people are in the DuPont Park Civic Association?
Yes, I don't know, to be honest. I know that I personally sit at the apex of Penn Branch and DuPont Park Civic Association, so I attend both Civic Association meetings. I know that Dugong Park Civic Association usually had older membership. And so it made it more difficult during COVID because the lack of access to internet, computer, Zoom, those types of things. So I am really unsure and don't want to speak to something I'm not positive of.
All right, we have a question from Commissioner Dorothy Douglas. Give me 1 second. Commissioner
Can you hear me?
Douglas.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Well, happy Lady of Valentine's to everybody, and God bless. I just wanted to know, your map looks so great. How did you reach out to the seniors that mainly at in-house? And that's my concern. They're still afraid to come out with so much crime and all. So is there any way that we can work to make it easier and simple so they can be a part of this? And that's my concern, not only with your SMD or 7B community. So because this is so important that we try to get everybody involved. And I know I just want to know what communication that you're using to work that out for those that can't, get out and don't have access, as you said, to computers and technology.
So I can't speak for everyone, but generally, I've always been very concerned about our seasoned citizens. And so in my immediate community, we have like almost like a phone tree, and we do a lot of phone calling. And so that's how I make sure that I am including the voices of our seniors in my immediate neighborhood, which is O Street. So that's how I have communicated, not just on this particular issue, but on all issues. So that's what we've done in this environment to get feedback.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dean. So good seeing you. And I just want to know, and I think that makes it more simple, but I wonder with the numbers, does the Board of Election, do they release that, or is there a system? I know that can do it, but it costs. But I just wonder, was that something that it didn't have to cost to reach out to those and getting that information? I would appreciate whoever could help with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have a hand raised by Pauline Scott. Ms. Scott, you have the floor.
Hi, I was taking a look at the map that appeared on.
She went back on mute. She muted
Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I wasn't too sure where Du Bois fall. Will we still be in 7B, or will we be outside of 7B into another part of Ward 7, like 7F, 7C? Because the map that I saw, it kind of confused me a little bit, because the way it was triangular, and I saw Du Bois up here, I saw Eli over to the right, and I said, wait a minute, does this mean we no longer part of 7B? And I think someone else was asking the same question about Crawford Place. Will Crawford Place still be in 7B, or will it be in 7F06? So the map wasn't too clear unless I didn't understand it.
No, and thank you for that.
Answer that. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for that. So the map that we have has a ANC 7B going Massachusetts Avenue at Minnesota Avenue all the way down. So that would be the new boundary, minus literally a half a block or so because of the way the census tract works. So take Randall Circle and go Massachusetts Avenue all the way down. And that's where the boundary of 7B will be in the proposed map. Again, this is just, an idea that we're putting forward, to, as we said, meet some of the concerns and comments that we heard earlier. So there's always flexibility to nibble around on the edges and stuff.
So are you saying that we still would be part of 7B? I don't have the map where I can see exactly where you were talking. I know you said something about Mass Avenue and all of this, so.
Let me put up this one, and again, I apologize. I'm still trying to pull up the other one that we have, but I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties, but
If you, Eric, remember Travis emailed the.
yeah.
So that might be an easy way to pull it up. Okay.
It's just the file that he sent it in is,
Okay.
so I'm just trying to, so can you see the map now?
Yeah, I see the map down here.
So this isn't the one that I'm talking, the actual map that I'm talking about, but I know where the boundaries went. So Massachusetts Avenue coming down to here, and then right here, as this cuts over right here, would be the new boundary of 7B.
Okay.
That would be the new boundary, trying to maintain the Massachusetts Avenue as the boundary.
Okay. So the map is, I really don't, I'm trying to see where Du Bois and Eli falls, because I don't see it on the map. I'm trying to.
Is this better for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I see you got Minnesota Avenue. So it is still K Street. Wow, this is not, I see.
So the purple would be is 7F.
The purple would be the 7F.
Yeah, so all this.
So you can see it clearer than I can. So will Du Bois and Crawford fall in 7F now and not 7B?
Yeah, because they're, yeah, up here.
Okay, so Eli, okay, so now we would be in 7F.
In one of our proposals, yes.
Okay, and so in your proposal, why are you taking us out of 7B and putting us in 7F?
The reason, again,
What was your thinking behind it? What was your rationale?
the rationale from the last meeting, we heard that several arguments to use natural boundaries. So Massachusetts and major boundaries. So Massachusetts, I did not mean to do that. Massachusetts Avenue is a natural boundary, and then you have the park right here. So to make our numbers work, you have to either gain population and shed population. Another thing that was mentioned was the inclusion of all of Fort Davis into 7B. 7E had a portion of Fort Davis that went over into here. So in order to try to meet all of those needs, the median point, if you will, the point where I think compromise could be made was following Massachusetts Avenue all the way down to create the 7B boundaries. But again, this is just a proposal. Nothing is set in stone until the final report is filed from the task force. But in listening to what folks had said last week and, understanding some of the neighborhoods, that's what we thought was, a good compromise to meet all of the needs that folks had. Does that answer your question?
And also, can I just add that we are restricted in numbers between 1,900 and approximately 2,100. So sometimes when we brought a census tract over, it took us significantly over the number. And so we had to shed that census tract for that reason.
Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, then it seems as if, I don't know what the top level for your population, if I'm putting this right, but it seems like 7B, 01 had the less, so you would move more people into 7B, 01 and still moving people out of 7B, 01, if I'm looking at this map correctly.
And again, let me make clear, this map, is just to answer your question, to show you, where the boundaries are. This isn't the map that, again, and I apologize for the technical difficulty in trying to get this program up and running, to show you the map that we have. But this is a general This particular map is a general representation of it. There, more technical boundary changes over in here and over in here to make the populations work to what.
Eric, can I just say,
Go ahead.
even if you look at this map, 7B01 is 2,088, and all of our SMDs are coming in and around similar numbers. That's only 12-person difference. And then we will be over the regulatory limit. So bringing in a census tract would definitely take us over the 12 person leeway we even have on this map. So when we are able to show all of our all of the maps, you will see that they're coming in pretty consistent numbers.
Here, I'll show you.
Yep. So
Eric, do you want to send me the file so I can see if I can open it and share it so you can?
Yes, I will forward to you.
So what is 7F? What is that like Greenway? Is that Greenway?
Yeah, that other side of Minnesota, Greenway, coming up to East Capitol, and the like.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the map correctly, 7F, putting this in 7F would start at Eli, and then you have Eli, you have D.
Again, I was just showing you had asked to see where those particular streets were, and I was also just trying to demonstrate to you that if we added those streets in, if you look at the 7B01 number right here, it's already at 2,472.
Right.
And by statute, the SMDs have to be between 1,900 in population and 2,100 in population, with, I'm sure, very few exceptions above or below. So in order to, meet the charge, and try to meet all of the needs that people had indicated, at least at the last listening session, that's where we made the cutoff, to help bring in, the Fort Davis folks over here, we had to slim down a little bit over here, but again, it's a proposal. Nothing is set in stone. It's nothing is set in stone. If you think that we should do something differently, let us know, and then we'll go back at it and, represent.
Well, how do I let you know I think you should do something different?
Through the task force.
I'll put my email in the chat. And if you email me with whatever concerns you may have, we will be meeting again.
Right.
And to incorporate this, okay? All comments. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, there's my email in the chat, Marla M. Dean, ward7@gmail.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised, but there are some comments in the chat. Scroll back. Task force member Keith Tyree asked if you could show 7B05. Mr. Rogers, if you could show 7B05.
Can I, Sheila, while Eric is pulling that up, someone said about a street being split, and this came up in our conversation yesterday. Any street that we pick as the boundary is going to be split in half between, so one side of the street is going to go to one side of the boundary and the other side is going to go to the other. We talked about, we wish that we could use alleys and instead as a cutoff, but that's not the feature and we can't do that.
Yes, that comment was by Ms. Martinez Sims and she has her hand raised. Did you want to take her question?
While Eric is pulling up 7B05, we can take it.
Okay. Ms. Sims, you have the floor.
So I guess the question, or more of the comment to elaborate on that, is when you have an issue that you're trying to get addressed that affects both sides of the street, i.e. parking, trash, what have you, you then have to coordinate with 2 commissioners. And again, it's hard enough sometimes just getting the commissioners in your own side to coordinate, let alone 7B and 7F to work together. So it just makes it very difficult in order to get things addressed. But if you're held to whatever street you pick, it has to be the boundary street. I'm just letting you know, as a resident, it makes it very difficult.
We agree, and that was part of our discussion, and that's why we thought that Mass Ave was the best boundary to choose for the most part, because for most of Mass Avenue, there are only houses on one side of the street and not the other, and so that eliminates that issue for a good segment of Mass Ave. Now, we understand that's not completely the case. There are exceptions to that. But we thought that that was the best boundary to diminish or decrease that very issue that you're talking about. Because again, I was surprised to learn that if you use a street, that one side is going to go to one boundary and the other side is going to go to another.
Yeah, I mean, as a resident, like I said, I've had to work on several issues on Crawford Place, and trying to work between 7F06 and the person who handles 7B. The new person who just got the other side of the street has been a lot more cooperative, but before it proved to be quite difficult. And the one thing that I will also, you can send me your email as well, because I'm very concerned with the fact that in the effort to try to keep the Fort Davis people together that you're taking, I agree with Ms. Pauline. I think that 7F could use some more active residents on our side, and that splitting is going to further diminish the amount of support that 7F06 will have. And I just think that, you know, we as a city, I feel like Ward 7 and 8 get the short end of the stick, and it's now appearing that 7F is getting the short end of the stick when it comes to constituency. So I definitely think that there's more conversation to be had about how that boundary is drawn.
Thank you. And Ms. Sims, it's in the chat, my email address. So, and I'll say it again, it's Marla M. Dean, ward7@gmail.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have another hand raised by Sharon Shanklin Brown. Ms. Shanklin Brown, you have the floor.
Good evening. To address the lady that just spoke, let me ask my question first. When you say Mass Avenue is going to be the dividing line, well, you know, Mass is split in half by Alabama Avenue. So are you talking about the entire Mass Avenue, or just a portion that's below Alabama that runs down to Randall? Or is it the entire Mass, which includes the other section of Mass that's on the other side of Alabama, if that makes sense?
It does. And we took, if you think of it, we took Mass all the way to Prince George's County, if you would.
You're talking about Southern Avenue.
Right. So we took, right. That's what we.
Yeah,
right.
That was my question when you said Mass. So you're taking now the other part, which runs to Southern Avenue.
Yeah, we took it all the way. All the way.
Yeah, and to address the question about streets being split, that's an easy fix. We have got to look at who we vote in as commissioners. They are elected positions. Each commission should know the boundary of their single member district. And if they are not servicing the whole district, then you don't need them. Simple as that. Hillside has always been, I don't know what you all are doing now with that, but Hillside has always been the dividing line between 7E01 and 7E02. So it's easy. If you know where your boundaries are and you know who your commissioners are, then that's an easy fix. Those people have got to be able to service the entire single member district and not just pick and choose where they want to serve. They are elected officials and they're elected to service everyone, that they're all of their constituents. And that's all I'm gonna say about that, because that's an easy fix.
Thank you for that. And I finally got it up so that we can actually talk about what we actually did. So here we go. Here's the map that we're talking about of extending things down to Massachusetts on down. And as I mentioned, again, we weren't worried about 7E and its boundaries for this purposes. That's another thing that we'll do. But this is the census tract that we're talking about that wraps around. So this is the boundary of 7B04 and 7B07. So this is what we are proposing. And if you look at, if I bring this out, for all of the 7B ANCs except for 7B07, which is 10 over, and 7B03, which is 31 over, all of our SMDs are within 1900 and 2100. So you can tinker around on a street or two to get this number right or to get this number right. And again, as I tried to mention earlier, we tried to use natural boundaries, like Alabama Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue, Alabama Avenue over here, Branch Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue down to the south, and then the ward boundaries where obviously we have no choice to do. It's not perfect because we do have to capture the population, but I think this is a good representation of our theory of trying to keep traditional neighborhoods to the extent that we could intact, with some splits, obviously. In Randall Highlands, on the south side of Pennsylvania Avenue, there's a bit of a split, as well as over at Fairlawn and Twining and the like. But to the extent that we could, we tried to keep neighborhoods from, again, what we heard earlier at the last listening session, is close to SMD boundaries, as close as we could to neighborhood boundaries. So this is the proposed map that we can have a discussion on going forward.
And Eric, I think Keith a while ago asked to see 7B05.
Oh, 7B05. I'm
You can
sorry,
scroll down, please.
didn't hear that. I apologize. Here's 7B05.
For Dr. Dean and Mr. Rogers, there are a couple questions in the chat. You may have answered this one, but not sure. So are the lines based on population or land boundaries?
Oh,
Based on population. I'll just give a small example for those who aren't familiar with the mapping tool. So let's expand 7B05 so you can see what we have. So it seems like Denver Street would be more of a natural boundary to go into. So let's add, let me pick my tool here. And you see it significantly drops 7B02 to 1879 and significantly increases 7B05 to 2249. So to the extent that we could follow Alabama Avenue in some of the more natural boundaries, like I mentioned, we did. But this is where you have to, unfortunately, have a street that's cut, or unfortunately a neighborhood that's cut, because by law we have to keep our representation within a certain parameter for one man, one vote. So hopefully that little demonstration showed folks why it's not an arbitrary this street versus that street. There is some diligence and thought that goes into trying to keep these things balanced.
exactly. And that's why I said we tried to use natural boundaries, but when it took us significantly over in population, we had to think differently.
And the second part to that question was if population, is this based on the 2020 census data? And the answer to that is, of course, yes.
Yes.
Let's see. No more questions. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on one second. There's another comment. Someone just agreeing with Ms. Sands that they currently face the situation of dual commissioners, 7D05 and 7F01. Commissioner Kelvin Brown says, I'm concerned with splitting 7B06 and having 7B05 come across Branch Avenue Southeast. And Commissioner
Can I
Tiffany
respond to
Brown.
that? Can I respond? So if you look at 7B07, like it comes across Branch Avenue because of the density of Penn Branch. So there are some commissions that come across major streets to get the population numbers correct.
All right. Chair Tiffany Brown asked, can she see 7B02 and 7B03 along the Fairlawn area?
Can she see it? Can you see it? Give us a thumbs up in the chat if you see what you need to see.
She actually has her hand raised, and there are a couple other hands raised. So you tell me how you want to do it. Do you want to go to Chair Brown and then the other two, or how do you want to do the hands raised?
Yes, let's go to Commissioner Brown and then, Chairwoman Brown and then the others.
Okay. Chair Brown, you have the floor.
Okay, so excuse me. I think my question is, I'm trying to see with 7B03, like down at Pennsylvania Avenue, the 2300 block, does that remain in 7B? I can't tell by the map too, and it's all small and it's all a foreign language to me, so I really can't tell.
2300, I think so, yeah. At least on the south side.
Okay.
Because here's
ahead.
yeah, it would still be. To the extent that it's, still part of the war. Well, it's Pennsylvania Avenue, so yeah, it would be.
Yeah, it's still part of the war. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
with 7B02, so where I currently serve, is going across Alabama Avenue, I guess one part of Denver Street. So does that, because when I came in, oh good, I'm still in 7B02. So would it now include the Safeway or just that side of the street to Denver Street? Because that's what I thought I saw.
It includes 7B02 would include the Safeway and Good Hope Marketplace.
In addition
This is
to
Good Hope
Skyland.
Mm-mm. No Skyland.
Oh, now that's gonna be a problem. So where did Skyland go to?
Eric, are you sure it doesn't include?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm thinking Penn Branch. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I'm thinking, can you see me scrolling on down to Penn Branch? I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'm not interested in Penn Branch. That
Yeah,
is
yeah, I know.
No. I was wondering why you were scrolling up. I was like, we're running around the direction. No, it includes.
It does, yes.
It does.
Both.
Oh, great. All right. All right. Thank you.
So-
I'm gonna go back and mute myself and try to look at this again.
So here's Alabama, Naylor Road. Here's Good Hope Marketplace right here, kind of 7B02 where it says 20809 is Good Hope Marketplace. Here's Skyland. Here about is where the new Starbucks is and all that. Excuse me, I'm a little for, oh God, I didn't mean to do that. New Starbucks right over in here. So. Does that answer your question, Tiffany?
I just put her back into attendees. Chair Brown, if you can please let us know in the chat. We have two more hands raised. Linda Green has had her hand raised for a minute, but I believe you all have to do first. I'm sorry, say that again, Dr. Dean?
Let's go to Commissioner Green first then.
Okay. Linda Green, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you and good evening, everyone. Just want to say you're doing a great job with the Ward 7 Redistricting Task Force. I know it can be a major task, and that's why the word task force is connected. I just wanted to let Dr. Marla Dean know, if you need an accurate count for total membership for DuPont Park Civic Association, contact David Retland. He would have that information. And I'm also the president of Fort Davis Civic Association, and I've been having a problem. I live in 7E02, but when I conduct these meetings for Fort Davis, and we're gonna start our meetings by conference call next month, most of the members live in 7B that attend those meetings. So I have total membership. I had called the membership chair. We have 98 members that are paid members, and our membership is $10 per household, and that membership is a year. So the issue is when complaints come in through meetings, I have to take all of 7B complaints, and normally what I would do is send it to Humphrey. And then I would also accompany him and work on those complaints to make sure that those issues are resolved, as well as the complaints in 7E01. So I'm just hoping that the Fort Davis community through this redistricting task force can be restored to 7B. Because when I was an ANC commissioner back in before 2003, I was in 7B07. And then when we went through the redistricting, it put me into 7E02. So right now we're having all kind of major problems. So I just wanted to put that information out so you all can see that it can cause a lot of issues and problems. So with me, I find myself resolving in my single member district, when I was the ANC commissioner, resolve those complaints in 7E02, but I also would help Humphrey to resolve the ones that was coming to my immediate attention by way of the Fort Davis Civic Association meetings. So I will conclude with that. Thank you.
Commissioner Green, Eric, you might want to respond to this.
Yeah.
But we try to bring as much of Fort Davis into 7B01 as possible. So it's a very dense area to bring in. Yes.
If you take a look, it bounds at Massachusetts, Penn, Alabama for the most part, and then Fort Davis Street. So as Dr. Dean mentioned, to the extent that we could incorporate all of Fort Davis into 7B again, we did, with the parameters of, trying to maintain natural boundaries, so hopefully this alleviates some of those issues that you had.
Yes.
Forward.
And I appreciate that, Eric, because see, the dividing line when we were in 7B was every on the east side of Massachusetts Avenue. That was Fort Davis. Every resident that lived on the west side of Massachusetts Avenue was in 7E. And I was on the east and I lived in 7B.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we tried to restore that.
Right. So thank you and Happy New Year to
you. And
you.
you can see, we got exactly to the number in that area, 2,100 on the nose. We had no room to give.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate that very much. And my oldest member in Fort Davis is Miss Lillian Chapman. She turned 100 years old, 100 years young, and she is one of the founding members of the Fort Davis Civic Association, which was organized September the 1st, 1960.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank
thank
you. Next, we have Commissioner D.L. Humphrey. Commissioner Humphrey, you have the floor.
All right, thank you and good evening, task force members and community members. I'd like to thank you all for whoever did this map. I was a little curious because I thank Commissioner Green for she stole my thunder a little bit, because I was definitely concerned about, the borderline between 7E and 7B07. I guess one of my questions would be, did anyone speak to when this map was drawn out? Did anyone speak to any members of the Fort Davis community, or kind of did the map just kind of get generated through the task force? Can anybody answer that question first?
We had heard from Fort Davis. Yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay, that's all. I don't want to draw it out. Now,
Okay.
I guess the question would be, when it comes to the Penn Branch area, of course, you hit it right on the head as far as the vastness and the density of this area. Being the commissioner for several, almost 10 years, I definitely, and a member of this community for all my life, I definitely know that particular part. Let me ask you this: when it comes to when it goes to Branch Avenue, do I now pick up the shops at Penn Branch, or what does happen with that particular area? Because there's some vast development that's going to happen very soon, and I know, of course, it's just both capacity that's been working with that area. So I just want to make sure that I don't step on any toes or whatever have you. But just want to know what happens with the shops at Penn Branch. Is that
The shops at Penn Branch stay in 7B04.
okay? All right.
It did not move. It did not move. No.
And I still get Fort Davis, the whole the shops, Fort Davis, and all the particular. So
You get
Where do you live?
no, because it's on the other side of the street, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that goes into the new SMD.
So
No,
I
shops at Fort Davis are in 7B07, right here.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So you get Pennsylvania for quite a stint, a long stretch of it. But because, like we talked about earlier, wherever there's a dividing line, the other side of the street goes to the other SMD.
Mhm.
So that's the issue there.
Okay. All right. And let me ask, I guess my final question would be this. What is the task force kind of a view on how they're going to get these type of maps disseminated throughout the community, so people can kind of know, hey, look, this is what we're looking at, or do I need to, kind of help out in my single member district and making sure that people get on calls like this, or, what would be the idealistic approach to that?
You definitely, should get folks at the next listening session, get them on Chief of Staff Bunn's email list, so she sends out all of the information, about, what we've done, the public record, because these are kind of public sessions and the like. The tool that we're using is a public tool, so it's the same tool that we use for redistricting, ward redistricting. Office of Planning, provides, access. So anyone can generate these maps. I'm sure we could send out the training video that OP planned to the community so folks can figure out how to use the tool if it's not intuitive. But the beauty of this process is that folks can do their own maps, and see the constraints that we're going through in trying to do certain things. But there's ways.
If I got you on that part, but as the other commissioners, think it was Commissioner Dorothy Douglas said, one of the things, and I definitely want the task force to kind of make sure, because that's why I stepped away from my role as director for Councilmember Gray to solely focus on my commission, one of the things that I think Commissioner Dorothy Douglas said it best is that we have a lot of seniors, a lot of seasoned citizens in our ward, and Dr. Dean as well. And so that's where I'm more focused. Like, hey, look, let me see how can, we navigate that process. But, if, I got you on the whole, the map piece, but I definitely, just want to kind of put that in the forefront and, and re-emphasize that on the task. Like, hey, look, that some of our areas, especially Penn Branch and then, Fort Davis area, and DuPont Park is a lot of citizens there. So, they don't have those capabilities or even know how to with those maps. But, I'm just hoping we'll figure it out.
Thank you. That's a concern. We want to make sure that everybody feels that they had an opportunity to engage.
No problem. Thank you very much, Dr. Dean and Eric. Appreciate y'all work. With that, I'm going back on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humphrey. Dr. Dean and Mr. Rogers, we have a question from Commissioner Kelvin Brown.
And let me just say one thing, Sheila, 7F is being very patient with us, so I don't want to go into their time. I'm just
it's a
okay.
call. It's the last hand that is raised.
Okay, cool. No problem.
If that's good with you.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Brown, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the task force for all of the hard work and putting this map together, like so many have echoed before me. Just have a couple statements and a question. So, and Eric, if you can zoom out. So I'm looking at the map here, and I think it looks, I understand the map completely. And as far was the land area taken into consideration while putting together the various boundaries, specifically mentioning 7B02, 7B07?
Sure, it definitely was.
Yeah.
Right, but land area.
I know it's not a criteria.
Natural boundaries were considered, but we also had to make sure that no one went over the 2100. And when we made, as Eric gave the example of when we pulled one census tract in, it brought in close to 250 people. So, we have to pay attention to that. And certain areas of our community are much more dense, like Fort Davis, than a Penn Branch. Penn Branch is not nearly as dense as Fort Davis, which means that that area becomes bigger to get to the 2100.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. There are no other hands raised. And Dr. Dean, as you noted, it is 5 after 7. And I think it's fair to say that if folks have questions about 7B, that they can reach out to the both of you and or Travis. And if you could just drop your contact info in the chat so that if there are residents from 7B with further questions, our 2 members here, I think, would be happy to answer them.
Just did it.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, 7B, great job, Dr. Dean and Eric. That was wonderful. Before we turn our attention to 7F, I want to echo something that was mentioned several times during that presentation. That's the fact that the comments that was made from the public in listening session number 1 was taken into serious consideration. I want to highlight that to encourage the listening audience to make their comments as the task force member present their presentation for 7F, knowing that your voices are extremely important and what you say is what our job to take in consideration. Having stated that, I want to call forth Miss Tamika and Ashley, who will be presenting for 7F. Ms. Tamika and Ashley, you two have the floor. I don't know who want to go first. Mr. Meager, you want to go first?
Ashley is leading the way for us.
Okay, wonderful.
I don't know where she went.
Don't see. Oh, there she is.
Yes, there she is.
Okay, go ahead, Ashley. I'm muted. You muted. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you guys. I stepped off for a second. I just needed to be able to basically share my presentation. Am I able to share?
Okay, Ms. Bond, is she able to?
Yes, yes, you have the ability to share.
You're muted
You're
again.
muted.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I muted myself because my 9-year-old was asking me about a game, you guys. I apologize. So it's hard being a parent sometimes. Are we able to see my screen? Boom, there we go. So everyone, I'm Ashley Ruff. I live in Ward 7, F01. I kind of just like listen to my neighbors and to the other people that live, well, our neighbors that live in the community. And one of the things is that I put up was the attributes of redistricting Ward 7. How can we add more resources needed through redistricting? There we go. Ward 7 population, age groups, and household. Ward 7 is currently the home of 81,000 persons, and as Ms. Sheila Bunn posted, it is actually 84,000. So if you think about that, that is a 3,000 person increase into our community. Also, and that's in Ward 7 alone. Also, Ward 7 accounts for 3,276 households. Ward 7 has 19,124 families. And so if anyone wants to ask me later, I can share where I got my statistics from as well. But that is an average of 3 persons per household. Ward 7 has over 11,398 children. And everyone knows that I'm more focused on what do we have here for the children? Do we have adequate shopping, food services, all of that? And by us taking on these other corner areas, we can add on to the attributes that we want for our children and our elderly in our community. And that takes me into 3. So where are we headed? Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I actually did skip over the highest age population. The highest age population right now is 25 to 34. I guess I'm past that. And then the second highest one is 35 to 44, and the third is 0 to 9. And I kind of feel like the third highest should be a little bit higher than that, considering that we have a couple of new area schools here in Ward 7. Not as much as we want to, but we do. So where are we headed? Adding on to Ward 7 allows us more resources and services being able to be spread throughout our SMDs to service everyone, especially those in need. Adding also allows us more allocation on spending funds to create better buildings, services, schools, grocery stores, fine dining, and more. Adding green space would also project more likely longer living health status for individuals in Ward 7, particularly F, which currently does not have any green space in the corridor area. And I saw the reason why I put that there as the last bulletin is because I read an article maybe about 1.5 years ago when I was running for ANC, and it was saying how if we had more green space here in 7F01, we would actually have the likely longhood to live longer here. And as you can see in Ward 7, there are kind of few of some issues. Going into 4, what areas are that community asking for and why? These are recommendations. We are recommending for the rest of Rosedale neighborhood, the remainder of Kingman Park, and Hill East as well. We feel it's imperative to add in our new neighbors and members. And when I mean by members, I mean business owners and all. They should not have to be in the shallow with the lack of full representation. Everyone is not represented within Ward 7 or the borderlines of Ward 7. It benefits all of Ward 7, particularly F, because we are the corridor of every outlet. Anybody that comes in from Maryland, Virginia, anywhere, you have to come down the corridor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And the corridor is the shortest, quickest turns to get any and everywhere through the city. And I'm saying it as a person that drives through the city on Uber Eats, Ship, Instacart, all of it. You also have to remember that people come here to go to work. Everyone that travels through the city does not live here. So again, what is 7F01 and the surrounding parts of 7F benefiting off of other people that do not stay in the city? Too many corners, as I said before, are connected to SMDF that could add in more revenue, population, and services. We want our basic needs met, such as eye care, food, health, schools, green space to run, play, and live, our fullest potential like everyone else in every other ward in the city. Our recommendation also is that we pick up 2 SMDs across the river. And just to further go into it, I just kept our old map because again, you can see the borderlines of basically what we want. Well, when I say what we want as a community, and again, it's just listening to everyone in the neighborhood, just through a basic conversation, posting on Nextdoor, having conversations on Instagram, Facebook, all of that, well, Meta, as they call it nowadays. And that is pretty much for my presentation. I just wanted to keep it plain and simple and cordial. So if anybody has any questions to ask, I'm more than welcome to answer them if I can.
So, Ms. Ashley and Ms. Tamika, I do see a hand raised. Are you ready to take questions?
I am. I was trying to figure out, oh, I see where I am. I'm still sharing my screen, but I think I got it.
Okay. Your first question is from Miss Leticia Ingram, and I'm going to, Miss Ingram, you have the floor. You just need to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Ashley. That was an excellent presentation. I'm looking at the map. I found it online. Somebody forwarded the link to the same one that's actually on our ANCF map page. And I wanted to know which 2 SMDs were you thinking needed to be added to 7F?
To be truthfully honest, I wanted to hear our community on what 2 SMDs, what would we like to consider to take over from across the river.
Okay. Do we know which ones will be available for us, or is that part, have they already carved out or identified like the ones that would fit, or do we just have an opportunity to select where we want to go?
To be truthfully honest, I haven't looked at it. That was actually one that was thrown at me a day and a half before. And so I really didn't look at what was actually to take across the river. I do know that once we get down past Kingman Park, partially past right there by the DC jail, that's 2003. And if you think about that, that's considered Navy Yard or across the river. So that could be a potential area right there because you can, that's adjacent to Benner Road, to DC jail, and I can't think of the other one that leads you down. It's right there off of Potomac, but they all lead together, and that's really on the borderline of 7.
Got it.
So that's one place right there that we could begin to look at.
That's a pretty good idea. Okay, I'm just listening. I'm new. I'm learning all this stuff, and so thank you very much for answering my question.
No, thank you. I'm new too, so I thank you for asking me the question.
Thank you. Let's see. And you have a question from one of your fellow task force members. Where did he go? Mr. Campbell has a question for you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's rough. Okay, I'm a former commissioner from 6010, and you were talking about annexing two SMDs on this side of the river. Now, what we have as an issue is that there's 6B9, 6B10, 6A08, 6A07, Kingman Park, Rosedale. There is enough population over here to be a ANC in and of its own right, but the population, something that I've been working on, because I don't have any knowledge of what happens on the other side of the river. You mentioned Navy Yard, but Navy Yard is part of Ward 8. What you're talking about, DC Jail, used to be 6B11. Okay, until Mr. Castone was elected, there was no representation for 6B11 because there were 11 SMDs on this side of the river. And the 2,000 residents that comprise the jail did not include, which is now the Park Kennedy, the Ethel, which is going up, which we can't count into right now, but the Harriet Tubman shelter. So I'm thinking that's roughly about 1,500 people. There are no residents in the St. Coletta's property because it is a school, 11-year school. There are no residents on the RFK property, even all that is considered. And then there are no residents on Kingman Island. All right, so if there is sufficient population over here to do a standalone ANC, and there is an issue with us, a lot of us on the side of the river who are trying to figure out, there's no commonality or issues that are related because of the population. What do you intend now, or where would you propose to annex additional SMDs from this side to take away from the population of what may be a standalone ANC?
Okay, so those were a lot of questions all wrapped up into one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I do the same thing.
I want to.
Go ahead, Tamika.
So I think the way that I feel like we've heard community be very strong is that there does not need to be this side of the river versus that side of the river. And what we've heard very clearly is that, yes, even though it may seem on the surface, there's not commonality in issues. I think there are some issues that I think once there is this conversation, I think somebody just put in the chat of like, have we had conversations? I think there probably have been some initial conversations with community, but I do think there is a way to begin to have conversations. We didn't focus on the math. We focused more on what we were hearing and how we could help to think about those issues in a larger landscape.
Right.
Was the way that we thought about it. So we didn't think about it in the 2000 versus what we did recognize in doing the math of our SMD is that we have the space to add on additional folks if you do the math on the spreadsheets that were given to us with some SMD. So that's what we thought about in terms of what we were hearing and trying to think about how to pivot that conversation. But I do think some kind of way we do need to figure out how to there was very strong sentiment of not having over there and over here. And I think we need to figure out how to merge those two conversations because I do think there's similarities in the issues that we just don't recognize on the surface.
All right, I hear what you're saying, but again, there is sufficient population over here. And what I've been working on is that there is sufficient population from what I've done so far, that there would be 8 SMDs on this side of the river in 7.
But
and those populations would be roughly about 1,983 to 2,000 people. All right, so that's what I'm trying to understand. Now, obviously, we're not having that discussion right now because it's a situational conversation for further in the March. But I'm trying to figure out too, again, like I said, if you're talking about reaching across the river, where are you going to reach, or where do you propose to reach to pull population from what is already could possibly be a standalone ANC?
I think at the time we'll play with the map and figure out the numbers. It feels like it's a numbers game versus an actual game of
exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like we can play with the numbers to get to that. Because when I look at a lot of how these districts are grown, they're not really, I think 7B made a good point of trying to find hearing from the community that they want those natural boundaries. I think is something that is very clear when you look at how things are drawn. It was like, they don't make sense how,
That becomes the other issue. You talk about natural boundaries. The river obviously is a natural boundary. The freeway is a boundary. So it's kind of difficult. It's just like a proposal, police talking, putting a hotel up and how it's going to benefit. And I'm saying, these Capitol Street Bridge, as you know, is not pedestrian friendly. So you have geographic boundaries and you have boundaries which are not pedestrian safe. They're only boundaries that are accessible, safely accessible through vehicle. So those will become my concerns. We can talk about that later, but I'm just putting that out there for your consideration.
yes, we've considered that. And I'm putting back out on the table the conversation around definitely making sure that we alleviate recognizing that this ward is growing and how we become a cohesive space versus, being divided by East Capitol and a river and land.
Ms. Tamika and Ms. Ashley, you have another, just want to read a comment from Co-Chair Blair that listening session 3 will focus on ANC 6A, 6B, and 7D to include Rosedale and Kingman Park. And you have another question from a fellow task force member, Justin Meany.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, thank you for the conversation. My question has to do, and I guess maybe this is sort of more of a question for the task force to think about, but when we're talking about ANC as commissions, not single member districts, how important is compactness for how we think about these districts? We have to bring together representatives from different communities. And when we think about how to represent communities and draw boundaries, compactness is very important for ensuring that you're having like communities together. For example, you don't want to have, we don't have this in DC, thankfully, but one concern that happens a lot in redistricting and in other jurisdictions is that you get districts that tend to spread out and go in long lines and take on sort of shapes that don't really match natural boundaries. That makes those districts and regions kind of hard to represent. So I'm sort of, from purely a logistical perspective, how worried are we about compactness?
I think that we should have been worried about compactness even before now doing the redistricting, because it already seems like that we are on compactness. At the end of the day, we just want all of our wards in Ward 7 to be accounted for. We want everyone to have the not exact numbers, but basically everyone, like I said, to be accounted for. I think that we need to add in two more ANC seats. And that's just being realistic. Ward 7 is growing. It's not necessarily about Ward 8 a lot right now. Anacostia is still kind of building up, but everyone knows that Ward 7 is prime real estate. So my main focus right now is, what do we do about Ward 7, but mostly about 7F, 7D, all of these quartering places that we're not able to function or get the same amenities as the other persons around us, the other SMDs or ANCs, if you kind of follow me. And if you don't, again, just ask me a couple questions because I'm still new to this.
Sure thing. I was just thinking one of the principles of sort of drawing boundaries is to create communities of interest, right? And it's not to be against crossing the river or anything like that, but I think the commissions probably tend to function a little bit better when they're more geographically focused on a specific area. So I'm not saying one way or another regarding whether ANC should cross the river. I served in 7D, which was on both sides of the river, and we did okay. But just something for the whole task force to think about.
All righty, Ms. Tamika and Ms. Ashley, you have a question from community member Martina Sims. Ms. Sims, you have the floor.
Hello. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your approach. I guess my question would be, or a comment is, where do you think that we will be able to get, I guess, for the most bang for our buck, as far as the things that you've outlined that we need in 7F? Is there a specific area where you think that we will be able, if we took over in some of these SMBs, where we could get a lot of what you've outlined here?
I think that we could, if we came down and expanded to Kingman Park a little bit. Yeah, we would have to come across the bridge for a grocery store until we're able to get, I think it's phase 3, where we're supposed to get a grocery store in replacement of the Safeway. I don't know exactly, when those plans are going to happen, but we're supposed to have another bid come in and replace them. So until that meantime, we can cross the bridge for one thing. But one of my colleagues brought up to me earlier is that we don't have reputable optical care here. And I actually have that experience with my 9-year-old son. He's like almost like blind. He needs glasses, but I have to go across over the Good Hope Road just to get to an eyeglass place. And it might seem something like so simple, but we don't have that here, and I think there's an eyeglass place right there in between the McDonald's right there on Benning Road. That's part of Rosedale. What is another thing that we don't have here? We don't have a lot of healthcare up and down throughout the corridor through Ward 7, period. I know it's been times that I've had to go out to Maryland to use my Medicaid from the city. And so, like, what would be the nearest place that has, medical services here outside of Unity? Or does Unity need to expand somewhere else if we were able to access another SMD? So there are other places for us to latch on to, not necessarily latch on to, but to utilize these services. They're borderlining us, and our kids don't have reputable services here. We don't as adults. We have to go around the world robbing to access these things, and they're right here on the end of the corner in other neighborhoods adjacent to ours.
I totally agree with you. I really think that I wish that I hope that other task force members are having that same spirit of thought that you guys have, because I think there is an equity issue even within just, I said before, I'm not sure if you heard that I feel like, Ward 7 and 8 get the short end of the stick when it comes to the whole city. And I really feel like 7F gets the short end of the stick when it comes to Ward 7. And, people may or may not agree with me, but that I do believe that's why people are fighting so hard to try to stay in 7B and don't want to be pushed out, because those things happen. But I really hope that you guys are successful in pushing for those things, because I really echo your sentiments and really believe what you're saying. And Ms. Bowden, when you said earlier about, this side of the river, about that side of the river, I really wish you luck in that, because everybody I talk to on that side, they clearly say, oh, you live on that side of the river. But I really hope that we're able to bring some of the things that you've outlined that are very much needed in 7F.
Thank you, and thank you for your questions tonight. We really feel your sentiment as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sims, Ms. Tamika, and Ms. Ashley. I don't see any more hands raised, but there are a couple of comments in the chat. There is a question. Well, first, Task Force Member Leamy wanted folks to know the task force, we're only supposed to take into account 2020 census numbers and not future population numbers. So that is informational.
I was answering Mr. Strobel's question he posted in the chat. He was asking if development in RFK has a role to play in SMD boundaries.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I don't see any other questions. I'm sorry. Commissioner in 7F Chair Tyrell Holcomb has a question. Chair Holcomb, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so very much. I'm so sorry my screen is black. This is embarrassing that I cannot find out how to turn my camera on.
It's okay. It's because this is a webinar. You don't have that ability. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I apologize. My picture has been a blackout since 2020. And more than likely will not change. I want to thank the 7F representatives who presented on this evening, Ms. Ashley Ruff and Tamika Bowden, and appreciate you, all of you all who are part of the task force. And certainly a huge shout out and kudos to co-chairs Blair and Castone. I wanted to share a bit of a sentiment around where we are in the redistricting process, and some of what I've heard in conversation from community members within ANC 7F and Ward 7 as a whole. Being a part of the group last year who worked to grow our numbers in Ward 7 and the push for more 4-7. It was really understanding that the city's process for redistricting is supposed to be a periodic balancing. And so to that end, thinking through the opportunities to add into our community is important. I do want to share with the task force members who have had the opportunity to start drawing maps that in Wards in 7F, we've had the opportunity to work with community members and organizations to build relationships with developers who are going to be bringing new opportunities. Cedar Realty, who's in the first phase of the redevelopment along Minnesota Avenue, A&G Group, who has plans for redevelopment of Meadow Greens, R13 Partners and Blue Sky, who were selected by the city to do Reservation 13. And these opportunities are really going to deliver these developments will deliver equitable opportunities for grocery stores, restaurants, home ownership opportunities, job opportunities for our community, contract opportunities, Ward 7's first hotel, and other new amenities. So certainly a step in the right direction. And so my hope and petition to task force this evening is that 7F's lines, as drawn out with these developments, would maintain their lines, in addition to thinking about what it means to draw new lines or new SMDs rather for our already established ANCs, certainly not wanting to feel that it's a them versus us type of conversation as it relates to our new neighbors who are on the other side of the river. And I'll say as a new young commissioner, a number of years ago, I went to a meeting that was on Hill East Reservation 13. And I felt that sentiment of, here's a person who's in the room who's in Ward 7, but on the other side of the river. And so certainly I believe that the way that we create that opportunity to be united and to work together and to live harmoniously, and for members in 6B to not just, or the residents who were once in 6B to not feel that their address is just Ward 7, but they're not a part of Ward 7. And so also understanding that I believe that this is also a time for us to be able to share with BC agencies that all of Ward 7 should feel that the agencies are working for us, including trash collection, snow plowing, pothole filling, response time of agencies, overall 100%. And I do also, I'm not sure if Natalie Green, who is the CAC president, is on this evening, but certainly curious to know how all of what's happening around redistricting is going to impact our 6th district map being drawn as it relates to servicing within Ward 7. One side is, I believe, the Hill East community is a part of 5D, I believe, as well as the Benning Road portion. And so curious what that would look like as well. But again, just wanted to be able to share those sentiments this evening.
Ms. Tamika and Ms. Ashley, I don't see any other hands raised, and I'm just trying to scroll through the chat to see. Is there any questions? No more questions in the chat, and no other hands raised. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Task Force member Melissa Freed has a question.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Just quick question. I sent out an email. I'm wondering if my email's not working. We're still coming up against the suggestion, the problem, the question about civic associations. And I understand Dr. Dean had mentioned she didn't know how many people were in Fort DuPont, civic associations, things like that. And one of the things I said in my email is like knowing where Hillcrest begins, which most people know, but where does Benning Ridge begin and end? Benning Ridge is part of 7F and 7E. There are a couple of other civic associations that are broken up in such a way. Just wondering if maybe we want to kind of map those out and ask these presidents or whatever of these civic associations, and we can superimpose that on top of this boundary idea that we're using right now to use natural boundaries, natural landmarks, natural roads, or the roads to do these civic associations. Most civic associations do follow that type of thing anyway. And so was just wondering how everyone felt about that. I sent that out last week and got no response.
Could you resend?
Sure.
I think I would love to explore it. It sounds like I would love to know more. Look at what you sent.
And Task Force member Dr. Paula Dean has her hand raised as well.
For 7B, we did look at civic association boundaries. And that was a big piece of us looking at natural boundaries, civic association boundaries, and population to come up with our map. So that was very much at the center of what we were thinking.
And like I said, most people Hillcrest is pretty set. So is River Terrace, because we have actual geographical boundaries that help us. But again, I'm just like, we're a task force for the entire Ward 7, not just our specific area. And maybe it's just me because I'm one of those people, like that. I'm on Fletcher Johnson Task Force. I help out wherever I can in Ward 7. Just want to look not just at my area, but also, like I said, Benning Ridge, what's happening in Capitol View, DuPont Park, Fort DuPont, making sure that these areas, for someone like Sharon Shanklin Brown, she goes to two ANC meetings, which for most of us that are presidents of community organizations or ANCs, it's a lot. You already have 57 other meetings you're going to throughout the rest of the month. So to be able to, even if it's two ANCs in this, or two SMDs in the same ANC, would be a big help. So to have somebody in 7F01 and 7F03, you're still going to one meeting as opposed to two.
Yeah, it's one of the first things we did is we did an inventory of the civic associations in 7B so that we would have that. So I agree with you, Commissioner Freeze, about that. That is important to overall thinking of the entire ward when we come to that point.
Okay, sorry, I'm just.
Let's see, Ms. Tamika and Ms. Ashley. It looks like there are a couple more questions. Give me 1 second. Let's see who that is. Okay, we have Commissioner, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Raquel Codling. Commissioner Codling, you have the floor.
Question. I wanted to know what was the previous number of residents prior to the proposed redistricting, and also what the current number would be.
The previous number, Ms. Collins, was 81,000. That would have been for 2021. So I'm assuming before that it would have been roughly about 79,000, considering that we're supposed to be using the 2020 census. But as of 2021, that was the number. And as of now today, as Ms. Bunn had shared in the chat, it is 84,000 and some change.
Okay.
So roughly you can put it at, we're like 85,000. I mean, I'm sorry, 8,500. I keep saying 1,000. I apologize, you all, but 8,500 here within Ward 7.
And then specifically for my single member district 7F 04, what was it before? I kind of have a sense, and what is the proposed, the current residents, total number of residents for the proposed redistricting as what we recently saw?
Say that one more time for me.
For
please.
specifically for 7F04, that's my single member district. What is the proposed total number of residents for 7F04?
I'm not particularly sure at the moment, but if you give me like 30 seconds, I'll pull it up and tell you.
Okay.
Are you asking based on the 2020 census?
For the map that was shared previously, when we're looking at when we're specifically looking at 7B, I wanted to know.
You said 7B. Oh, that's
yeah. No, I'm 7F04. But when we're looking at the map, when it was 7B's presentation.
Oh, that's Dr. Dean, and
yes,
I don't see the other gentleman. They might be able to give you a number in their map.
Yeah, so I wanted to see.
The general number, but for all SMDs, regardless of the ANC, is between 1,900 and 2,100.
Mhm.
So all SMDs would be in that number range.
Okay, thank you. That's all that I have.
And let's see, we also have, 1 second, we also have Miss Natalie Green, I believe, who's the new CAC president. Miss Green, you have the floor.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. We can.
Good evening.
Hi. Yes, I am currently serving as the CAC chair, and I was interested to know when you we're going to change the lines and some of the boundaries. What about our policing? Will that change? Has any thought been given to that? We need to give careful thought to that because, you know, policing affects so much. There are budget concerns that we need to consider with that. So has that come up in the conversation and discussion?
It has not on my end for 7F because I don't think that it would affect us over here, but I didn't take into account that it would not affect other boundaries that we would like to include into ours. But for 7F, we would still be in partial of 7, actually all of 7, if I'm not mistaken, would be 6D regardless, because 6D has a substation off of Pennsylvania Avenue. And we also have the new station, which is located off of Nanny Helen Burroughs and 50th Street.
And
Okay.
Ms. Ashley, I just want, so that everyone is clear, the redistricting process does not affect police boundaries. So it's not a part of the conversation because the redistricting process does not change the MPD service areas. That's not a part of the conversation or what happens with redistricting. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
And Sheila, can we also let everyone know it does not affect school boundaries either? So schools are not a part of the conversation because it does not change school boundaries either.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. And task force members, Justin Leaney just put into the chat the map of MPD's patrol areas, just so everyone has that information. But just to repeat, in the redistricting process, school boundaries and police boundaries or service areas
are not affected in this process. That's two totally different processes. And let's see who else. Thank you, Ms. Green. Going to lower her hand. And Councilmember Leany, do you have a question? I see your hand raised, and Dr. Dean, your hand is raised as well.
More of an observation regarding the police patrol area maps. I was going to say ANCs don't have a ton of oversight ability with police, but I do know that they work. I do know that there's a working relationship in a lot of cases, and that's another thing we may want to think about when we're creating ANC boundaries is not creating a lot of extra work for commissioners trying to keep track of multiple patrol areas, since it's another set of meetings that they have to go to each month.
It looks like those are all of the questions regarding 7F. I don't see any other hands raised, and I don't see any other questions in the chat. Hold on. Yes, okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat or any other, I'm sorry. We have a hand raised from Task Force Member Mandela Deskins.
Oh, you pronounced my name right. Well done. I just want to, I'm sorry.
I said I'm excited. I got it right.
I know that this police boundaries thing is coming up, and so maybe for the next meeting, like folks can get like some clarity around whether they're going to be redrawn at all or anything going on with that, because I would hate for us to like consider that like certain areas will, like, you know, the whole thing of like the Hill East folks or Rosedale folks, they are in a different MPD boundary than the rest of 7-8F, for example, and then like MPD redraws those boundaries anyway. That wouldn't be a good thing to consider if it's not necessarily relevant. So could we find out what the details are around that, if that's something that people are bringing up as areas of concern?
Sure. Our office can reach out to Chief Conte's office. We have not heard, excuse me, any conversations around MPD service areas changing, but we can definitely look into that and report back to the task force.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Ms. Tamika and Ms. Ashley, I don't see any other hands raised, and I don't see any questions in the chat. Task Force Member Alcorn just stated that Hill East and Rosedale have footing in both MPD's 1st and 5th districts, just as an FYI. But no other hands raised, no other questions in the chat. So I think we turn it back over to Co-Chairs Blair and Castro.
All right, well, I'll turn over to Co-Chair Blair. Great job, 7F. And Co-Chair Blair.
Thank you. A wonderful job with presentations this evening from 7B and 7F. Thank you, task force members who presented this evening. And thank you for those who are here and just participated in this conversation that we had this evening. I learned a lot this evening, and that is, I'm excited. Just taking in the information and hearing from the residents of the communities of discussion tonight. I do want to encourage everyone to take a look at the mapping tool. There may have been some things that maybe you have a different opinion about the map that was presented this evening. This is just a suggested map. It is not written in stone. The map that we will submit to Councilmember Gray is not written in stone. There's still room for our changes. And just so that everyone is aware, all of the commissions in Ward 7, in general, the boundaries will change. For as much as people may not want their boundaries to change, just because of the sheer numbers, the boundaries will change, including my own SMD. It will change. So just know that no one is picking on you and your SMD or your commission. It's just what we have to do to be in compliance with the law. I do want to just take a second to acknowledge that our next listening session, we have two of Brian Alcorn from 6A and Francis Campbell from 6B representatives with us this evening. And so you'll more than likely hear from them in our listening session number 3 as representatives for their communities, their areas where they currently reside. I'm not picking them out, but Brian is the only rep from 6A and Mr. Campbell is the only rep from 6B that we have on the task force. So I'm sure they will encourage members of their immediate area in 6A, 6B to participate if they weren't on the call this evening. The listening session number 3, it may be longer than tonight. We've been keeping it to 2 hours, but because we will be discussing 3 areas of concern, it may go longer than 2 hours. So I do want to take a moment to thank task member Patricia Stamper. She has no idea I was going to do this, but I've seen her widely publicizing our listening sessions on social media. I do appreciate that because I can't do it all. Commissioner Castone can't do it all. We really appreciate it when task force members step up and fill the gap where it's needed. And I also want to give a great appreciation to Chief of Staff Sheila Bunn, who's been instrumental in making sure that all these proceedings that we're going through, everything is recorded and available for review for those who are not able to attend, not only this listening session, but any of these public meetings that we're having regarding ANC redistricting. They are all available for review. Usually she publicizes the link usually within a day or 2 of the meeting. And of course, anyone who has a phone can always call in to listen. So I do realize that some of our seniors may be limited with technology, but listening in, and they can also contact a representative from the task force that is in their area to get up to date and to share their thoughts about what the new Ward 7 is going to look like in terms of ANC boundaries. So that is all I have this evening. If anyone else, last call for any questions, we're going to adjourn this on time. We wanted to not put a stopwatch on you, but yes, Chief of Staff Bunn.
Yes, if I could just say one thing and say 2 things actually. So thank you for the kudos, but this is a team effort. The communications piece is handled by our communications director, T.N. Tate. When task force members have questions for the Office of Planning, that is our legislative director, Mr. Terrence Northwest, and both of our constituent services team members are on these meetings with us. It is a team effort. Couldn't do it without them. We are here to support the task force, but this is your show. But you have people behind here making sure you have what you need. And it is our pleasure to serve. And Councilmember Grace thanks each and every one of the task force members for your service. Even though he can't be at every meeting, that's why you have staff. We are here. But I want to share the kudos with my team. I couldn't do this without them. And we definitely want to work in partnership with you to make sure that Ward 7 is aware of these proceedings, that they get the information if they are not able to attend. So just wanted to share that. And again, the council member wanted me to make sure that you all knew that he greatly appreciated your work. And just for the general public that's listening, as Chair Blair said, the next session is March 3rd. So there is always more opportunity for the community to participate. And once the task force makes its recommendation to the council, it doesn't come to Councilmember Gray. It goes directly to the subcommittee on redistricting. They will have another public session to discuss all of the ward maps, and then the full council will vote on the recommendations that have come from the task force. So just want to make sure we are transparent and clear with everyone that this is a Ward 7 task force operation. Councilmember Gray's office is just here to support and to make sure you have the resources that you need. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Sheila Bunn. I believe that brings us to a conclusion this evening. Thank you all for, I think we had like 40, how many participants this evening? 48?
We had 43 registrants the last time I checked.
43. Thank you all, 43. And we will be publicizing the listening session 3 for all the task force members to disseminate to their communities as soon as we can. Probably, what's today? Today's Wednesday. Probably by Friday, you'll have that information. But yes, March 3rd looks like that's the date. Thank you all and good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Have a good evening.